Amazing. Thanks, Tracy. So welcome to our friends on Zoom. If you are here for the first time, we are so glad for you to be joining us. And if you are on Zoom, know that we'll just have you stay muted and you can communicate with Tracy and our team via chat back and forth. So I just want to kick us off today by telling you a little bit about this program. The What Matters to Me and Why Speaker series is sponsored by the Staley School of Leadership and supported with a cross-campus planning committee. I'm going to ask if you are a member of our committee, would you please stand and just give a quick hello? Or if you're a past speaker of What Matters to Me and Why, please stand and give a quick hello. Yeah. The What Matters to Me and Why series began in 2017 and was designed to build and strengthen bonds between people who teach, learn, and work together daily to help foster an understanding of one another and how we can embrace our values and K-State's principles of community. Since then, we've had the opportunity of hosting 31 K-State faculty and staff members from a wide variety of departments, experiences, backgrounds, and beliefs. Each of these presenters have shared their story of personal journeys, elaborating on how they've chosen to live their life, their core values that they've adopted, and the lessons that they've learned along the way. This personal storytelling and these lectures support K-State's principles community and the health promoting university values. At its core, What Matters to Me and Why is about connection, creating space for meaningful storytelling that deepens our understanding of one another. In a world that often prioritizes productivity over reflection, these conversations remind us that our values, our experiences, and our choices shape us not only in our careers, but the ways that we show up in our families and our communities. We all have stories to tell, and we are excited to hear from one of our storytellers today. In just a moment, Jen Cook is going to introduce Dr. Shawna Jordan, who serves as the Associate Dean for Student Success and Undergraduate Studies in the College of Health and Human Sciences. I have known Dr. Jordan since I was a wee student, just a couple years ago, and remember meeting Dr. Jordan in my first job at K-State and looking up to her as both a mentor and someone that I wanted to be able to learn from. So I'm very excited to be able to hear her story. All right, with that, I am going to turn this over to Jen to introduce Dr. Jordan, and please give her a welcome round of applause.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. I think I first just want to start by thanking everyone that's here in the room and joining us on Zoom for Dr. Jordan's presentation. An additional future thank you to those that are going to catch this recording later. I know there are several people in this room that got very nervous. I just got handed a microphone. For those that don't know me, you'll soon find out why. Spoiler alert, I'm already a naturally large talker, and so probably don't need a microphone, but we're going to try. So my name is Jen Cook, and it is... Man, oh man, it's truly an honor to be standing and introducing Shawna today. This is why. She's a brave woman for picking somebody who she knows, very well knows, cries at just about everything, but I have hopefully cried enough thinking about writing this, cried enough writing this, and I'm judging by how it's going now, I'm probably not going to get through this without crying again. So Shawna's presentation today is going to spend some time reflecting on the impacts that our life moments, our encounters, and our experiences have in helping shape who we are and helping to write our story. I can say with so much certainty that the impact that Shawna has had on my life story has been tremendous, and I know the ripples she has created, the lives she has impacted, and the people she has touched are truly immeasurable. I find it only fitting to share a story of how, without Shawna, I truly actually would not be standing here on campus today. I first came to know Shawna when I worked as an athletic trainer in K-State athletics. As the former program director, really more like the founding program director, my interactions with Shawna started when I started getting students assigned to me out in the athletic training room. As my time in athletics was coming to an end and I was starting to think about what it is that I wanted to do next, Shawna reached out. I'd love to say that she texted me or called me or that she even emailed me. But what's funny about that interaction is she actually sent me a message on Twitter. That was February. She sent me a message asking if I could reach out to her, if I could email her because she had a question for me. That was in February of 2015, and I still have that message in my now ex inbox. From that message, I emailed Shawna. Her question for me was simple. Are you still in Manhattan? When I said yes, we immediately made plans to meet up for lunch at Takalucha. We spent a lot of time catching up and checking in on each other before she presented me with an opportunity to come to campus and teach our introduction to athletic training class. I'd never thought about teaching, having just ended a career in Division I athletics, but I thought maybe this was the next life chapter that I needed. And here's where her impact began. That interaction has led to, oh my God. I knew it. Okay, here we go. It's led to 10 years. This is year 10 for me of teaching and advising at K-State. It's led to hundreds of impacts that I've been able to make, helped shape who I am, both personally and professionally. I was gonna cry. It has truly lent me to finding my passion and my purpose. The interactions that Shawna has with people are so intentional. Whether she's reaching out to you for a professional opportunity or she's just reaching out to check on you, everything she does is with intent. And it is that intent that leaves the lasting impressions in others who then go on and leave lasting impressions in the people in their lives. And that continues, thus creating the ripple effect. So much of how I approach things, whether in my career or life, has been rooted in WWSD. What would Shawna do? It is the way she carries herself, engages with others, listens to and hears you, cheers you on, and has your back that truly inspires me every day. To know Shawna is to know loyalty, to know love, and to know true friendship. To know Shawna is to know hard work, to know passion, and to know dedication for what you do and what you love. And to know Shawna is to truly know what leaving a lasting impact on someone is. While she knows I look to her as a mentor, what she may not know is I see her as so much more. I see her as a best friend. I am confident that her presentation today will have an impact on everyone who is listening, and that those listening today will then go on and make impacts on the people in their lives. It is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Shawna Jordan. It should just roll through, yeah.
So, thank you. As Jen said, she's a crier. Those of you that know me, there will be some tears. It's been a really rough last year. But as you start to see the photos, this is just gonna go through to give you a sense of who I am. And I think to really start is one, I was honored when Tamara asked me about doing this, but at the same time, it's really why? But to, okay. But to have this, I think I need to start with what Jen said, but it's also, if you know me, what you see is what you get. There's really not much difference, but it all started, as I said, and kind of my blurb was, I grew up in a small town. And I think that's really what shaped the most of me. From the moment is the understanding of community, the understanding of hard work, working for everybody, pitching in, no questions asked, and more importantly, just the village that gets to shape you as you go along. And I was blessed to know both sets of my grandparents growing up, even great-grandparents, but also have a huge extended family, real family. But then I look at it as I have a huge family that is friends that have become family. And so as a small town kid, I was farm kid, we only knew work. I mean, and it wasn't because that was how my parents presented it, was more, you know, this is expected, much is given. I can remember at times saying, well, everyone else gets to go do something else because they lived in town. For us to go to town was a big deal. And at the time, I didn't understand it. But at the same time, my parents said, have you ever wanted something that you didn't get to have? And that resonated that no, they did provide, and we got to have that opportunity. So when we start to really think about what my values were, it's pretty easy. It's faith, family, and friends. And one can't happen without the other. Grew up knowing my faith, grew up with grandparents that instilled that in us as well. But also with that was that family was going to be everything. And that, so I'll just say it. So I lost my niece tragically last July. And so it's been really hard, and family's really been important, but so it just brings a lot back. But when you really think about the value of your family, and again, I don't think we realize it till you start to lose things along the way, or you start to lose those family members and what they've meant to you and how they shaped. And so all four of my grandparents had the opportunity to start school. They never got to finish. And so from early on, education was drilled into us. Like, that's learning is your opportunities, reading books and all of that. And I still vividly remember sitting with my mom's dad, my grandpa, and hearing the stories of he had gone to school but was only here 1 year, had to go home so his younger siblings could have those opportunities. But he didn't let it define him. He still read, he still traveled. He really looked for opportunities to get to continue to grow and continue to have that impact. And at the same time, worked hard. He was a farmer as well, but he also had a second job. And so I think when Jen says work ethic, I don't know any different. And I've always joked to my mom that it's her fault because I don't know how to not do 110% in something. But I think it's also we were raised to believe you can do it. If you're willing to do the time and put in those efforts, you'll be able to have those opportunities. And so I was also blessed to get to go to pre-K all the way through high school with the same group of students. And those of you that grew up in a small town know that. And I would not be who I am without them. I mean, we can pick up the phone and it may be 2 years since I've seen some of them, and we're right back where we were. And to tie it to what happened in July, like there was no questions asked. They immediately showed up. They reached out. They asked what we needed. They helped take care of my mom's by herself now back home on the farm because we lost my dad 5 years ago. They were like, we got her. We were looking out, all this. And those blessings, it just reminds me of when I think about my faith, and that God's always said, like, it's community. The support is what drives us. The support is what gives us joy. And those of you that know me very well know I'm not great at accepting help, but it's those moments that remind to let people do that for us and really have that impact on that. And one of my best friends literally has been my best friend since birth. I was a preemie baby. We didn't have ambulances back in the day in our small town. So her mom had just had her 2 months earlier and was a nurse, and took me in a Winnebago with my physician to Wichita to be able to be in the NICU. And so we joke that her and I were bonded and had that impact from the beginning, but it really is that type of story that shapes who we were. And to this day, it's everything and those people along those ways. When I think about where I got to, some of you know the story. I had a high school counselor tell my parents I shouldn't go to college, even though I was a great student. I just couldn't take an ACT test to save my life. So I would say that shaped it, that moment of like, fine, I'll prove you wrong, because it's not about that. It's about all the other things. And thankful to a high school mentor, Mr. Rao, that I love sports. I was never going to be good enough to play sports. And in our small town, everyone got to play. But I was also, if I can't do it, I don't want to do it. If I can't do it, great, I don't want to do it. But he mentioned, he's like, hey, I think you should look at this sports medicine thing. And I was like, okay, what is it? And so I'll never forget it. I was just finished my 8th grade year, and there was this opportunity to go to a summer program. And he's like, I'll see if the school will pay for it for you to go. I think you will like it. That started it. That started the journey of getting to have that opportunity and finding the passion of still being able to help people and have that impact of what I loved with sports, but really getting to make a difference. And to this day, he is still probably my biggest cheerleader for everything of the highs and lows and all of that. And, you know, I look at it from, and you'll see through the pictures of, once I got to K-State, just the differences of things that I've truly been blessed. And I reflect that, I remind myself that too much is given, much is expected. And that doesn't mean monetarily. I'm a big believer in what I tell any student that I meet with is pay it forward. You can thank me all you want, but do the next for the next person to help them to do whatever they need. And at times, I think the student impacts really are, they don't know how much they leave on me. They've all taught me lessons along the way, whether it was helping navigate things that I could have never imagined that they were going through as a student, to even just learning their stories. And really, when I think about it, and I said friends that become family, it's the stories for me, it's the relationships, and it's truly learning about those individuals and what makes them them, and the reality and the realness authentic of that. And so I've been blessed to travel all over the US and all over the world and taking students and seeing the world through their eyes is just as eye-opening. And I don't have children. I tell everyone I have 3,000 kids out of our college, but to see the awe, and I still, like, there was a student one time when I was working athletics, we flew to New York, and I was like, hey, look out the window, there's the Statue of Liberty. And they were like, it's not real, it's so small. They had never flown before. And you just forget that sometimes the opportunities we've been given, we take for granted. And I think that's where I just remind myself that I've been led to where I'm at. Took a leap of faith similar to Jen of leaving athletics and was like, maybe I should do this teaching thing. Never thought I would teach. And then it was laid on my heart that, like, you teach every day. You teach in different ways. And so I was working in Kansas City. I was working with high school kids, loved it, loved seeing the joy of them discovering who they were, the passions they had. And along the way, kind of was truly the leap of faith of, I'd already had my master's. I was like, I'm done with school, not going anymore. Prayed about it. And that's probably the biggest thing is I really do believe in my faith to guide me. I contemplate a lot. My mom would tell you that I don't take any decisions lightly. I really try to think about it. And so it was like, okay, I think I'm supposed to do this. But if I'm going to teach, I want to know how to teach. I know my content. I knew all of that. So again, took a leap of faith and did a PhD in education that at times sat in classes going, I have no clue what I'm doing. I should not be here. And that fear of being in front of a classroom and what if they see that I'm not qualified? What if they see I can't do this? And then I just had to keep reminding myself, is God put me here? He's going to trust me. He's going to guide me. We'll get through it. And I think that's the biggest reward is now I've been here, came in back in 99, so you can do the math. And I'm truly honored to say I know where most of the students are from when I started the athletic training program till I transitioned out of being the program director, because they still reach out. And it's interesting of just checking in, or they're sharing their celebrations of a new job, a new marriage, new birth. But at the same time, there's been a lot that said, hey, I have this next opportunity. And it may be a student that I taught in 2000. So, 25 years ago, that's like, what would you do? What do you think about it? And to be truly blessed and honored that they still care what I think. And sometimes it's just talking through it and they'd already come to the decision. It's just that sounding board of I have support. I know that I can do this, that it will go through is truly a blessing. But I think the biggest impact is along the way, each of the individuals I've met that come from such different backgrounds that to learn and to know their stories is really what I would say has shaped and really continued to allow me to have a lot of empathy, have an understanding, even though I look different and I didn't maybe have the same struggles they did, but to be able to listen and understand and help guide. And don't always know if I said the right things or guided them the right way, but I trusted along that way. And I can still remember, I'm going to point to Kamathi because we've talked about this a lot. The first time that I remember sitting with a student that was trying to decide, wanted to go to med school. And I said, if you'll work hard, I will give you 110% to help you get there, but you got to match me. And he's like, I will. He's like, this is my dream. And I said, okay. And I remember talking to Kamathi being like, I really just wanted to say, I'll pray for you. We can do this. But you can't, right? That's so hard to do at times. And Kamathi's my sounding board. Sorry, Kamathi, to call you out. But, and I will never forget, because then our next meeting as we were working through, thinking about how to adjust his classes. And he didn't come from a family with a lot of means, so he always had to work. We were going to have to do a very non-traditional path for him to get to med school. But at one point, he's like, I've prayed about it. And I was like, oh, this is the door. God's allowing me to say, we can talk about this. We can pray about it. We can think about it. We can talk about the hardships that are going to be. And for me, that's that impact, that there's times that it didn't even know it was going to be there, or the times that it presented itself. And I don't take that for granted. I think it's really important to keep that in mind, that for some, that able to live that authentic self is really meaningful for them. And then as we get to know that and shape that and unfold that is just a huge blessing. And again, he made it, he's finished up. He's actually now a physician in Kansas City, and it was non-traditional to get there, but we got there. And again, I think the other is sharing that sometimes their paths aren't going to be linear. And that's where I tell my story. My first semester of college, not great grades. And I was a shock. I never had to study in high school. And so to be able to relate when that kid's like, I'm not passing class, like, what do I do? Or I don't think I want to do this anymore. And reassuring that it's going to be okay. And we go back to, you've got a community, you've got all of us here to help you and really talk through that and have that experience. But then thinking, and this is again, just the different walks of life. I can remember first time as a student working football, and one of our guys from Florida made the comment, we were all leaving for Christmas break, and he's like, I don't want to go home. And I was like, what do you mean you don't want to go home? Like, we're family, like we see family. And he goes, I won't make it back. Now, what do you mean you won't make it back? And it was the first for me to really realize like the concerns for some of them living in communities they live in, or the potential he's like, I could be shot, or all these things. And I think for me, initially that was such a weird, I don't know what other word to use, concept, because I had never felt unsafe in my community. Like we just went, we didn't lock our doors, for God's sake. Like you just didn't have to worry. And to all of a sudden realize like not seeing his family wasn't the top priority. It was to be safe and to have those opportunities. And so I think that's when it really started to resonate with me. Like, let me just ask them about and learn from them and their stories and their journeys. And from that moment on, that was more of when, and anyone that knows me, if I ask you how you are, I really want to know how you are. And so that really started that path of let me get to know the individuals. Let me get to know who they are. And again, I may not be able to solve or fix or help anything, which is very hard for me. I want to fix most everything, but that I could start to understand more. And maybe I could help relate in some way or have a positive connection with that. And then, so again, blessed to have now friends from all these walks of life. But I would say it really started to hit home when the blessings to get to travel abroad and take students abroad and really realize the blessings we've had. But again, as they start to reflect on challenges we've seen or hardships in some of those countries we've gone to, full transparency, I've taken students to developing countries. We don't go to easy European world. We do as well, but for them to see, and even for myself to see these people that are so happy, thankful for what they have in that moment, even though when you look around them and it's despair, it's perhaps, living on one meal a day, different things, but yet they count their blessings and they're so thankful for what they've been given and those opportunities. But to really help our students start to grow in the uncomfortableness of that, but start to appreciate the things that we've been given. And then again, it goes back to, I'm like, please just pay it forward, give those opportunities, or listening for that for someone else with that component. And so that's a lot in one kind of component. But as I made the choice to transition from faculty, full-time program director, which was hard. That was my baby, as Jen said. I got to build it and shape it and with that, but I wanted to also, at the same time, I realized I was making an impact with our 200 students I had, but yet their friends were coming and saying, I need hope, or what could this be? And so a leap of faith again, do I leave all that and move into a different role to maybe have a greater impact or have a greater opportunity to serve? And it's rewarding. There's days it's hard, as we all know. There's days that the difficulty things come in that aren't always the joys, but then there's the joys of, I got into grad school, I got into wherever. But there's also the tears. There's the tears of, I didn't get in. I've lost, we've had students, I've worked with students that lost family members or been hit with disasters. And I think we get to be that family here. And that's usually what I tell the prospective students and their families is I'll be your surrogate parent here. I'll be that person that you can call and come in and cry and whatever with that for it. And now it's the full circle moment. I've got friends that their kids are coming that I'm like, oh my God, yeah, back to high school and college days. Lindsay and I had an encounter of that this past year of one of our college classmates, their son was coming to K-State. We're like, oh yeah, okay, we're old now. But again, I don't know, I wouldn't trade it. And I just continue to think, the path that I'm on, is it the path I thought of at 22, leaving K-State? No, not at all. But that doesn't mean it's not where I'm supposed to be in the moment. It's not meant to still shape lives and still have that impact and still have that forefront with it. And so so that's been a lot. But so as you're seeing, my brother, so there's just two of us, my brother and I, growing up in the country, we only had each other. The nearest neighbor was a good 2 miles away. So you either liked each other or you hated each other. Moments we hated each other, but we both reflect. We laugh now because when we were both in college, people were like, "You're really best friends with your brother?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like I don't know any different." And it's an odd relationship. I know those of you with siblings, it's usually more sister to sister, brother to brother, but it's truly someone I can't imagine going through things without him. As we've experienced this tragedy this last year, not even a full year yet, that the strength that I've seen him go through provides the strength, but we also at the same time say, and I know it's for some, it's hard to believe, but we know that there's got to be something good that's going to come out of this, or there's going to be a pathway for us to figure this out. And the hard part is we still have May, my younger niece, the blonde. She's embarking, she's going to be a freshman next year in college, and helping her navigate and see the joy in this next step and those things that are there, and reminding her that she still can live her life and fulfill the dreams that her and Ava, had talked about. With that. And so I think that's part of it, is not saying I'm, thanks, Kamathi. Yeah. I think the hardest is again, being real, that there's just hard days, and there's just going to be days that there's no answers, and that there's days that you feel like your work doesn't matter. We've had them. I've had them. This week has been that way for some things going on. But I think, but then you have those positive moments of that, again, of an impact that was made that you didn't even realize that was made. The thank you email, or a parent calling just saying, "Hey, I appreciated you being there for my son or daughter," or a colleague just wanting to sit and talk. And those are making that space and remembering that community. I think Tamara said it when we talk about kind of that fast pace and those moments of just living in a society that at times has lost the emphasis of community, has lost the emphasis of a village, a tribe. I don't know. I think of it all different ways. To take the moments and reflect in that, to take the moments and get to know the people around you. And again, it's who shapes you, and the hardships are there. There's going to be the positives, there's going to be the negatives. And I don't want to say that everyone I've encountered has always left a positive impact, but I think it's been a lesson. And that's another thing that I think for me, and Jen knows this because I talk to the students about it a lot, is that we have a lesson in everything we do. And so whether it just sucks in the moment of, loss of example, but that there's a lesson, and we don't know it right now. We're not going to know it till maybe 10 years, 12 years down the road, but there'll be something we take back. And I think for me, that's a lot of when I think about my small town and growing up there, it was hard. Like everyone knew everything. Everyone knew your parents. They knew if you'd done something Saturday night, when you got to church on Sunday morning, you're like, good God, what happened? But, and I think you don't appreciate that till you're gone from that community, until you need to rely on these moments and have those experiences and really have that impact with it. And I would even say that of growing up and knowing those surrounding towns, I was in 4-H. A big part of my life was 4-H and leadership within that, and the friendships that were made through that. But again, all of a sudden it was all these commonalities and all these things that really meant similar experiences to each of us along those pathways for that. But the hardest is when I think about it, of I wasn't first gen for undergrad, but I was first gen for master's and PhD. And at the time, I remember asking my parents or questioning, should I go to master's? But I knew it in our field, that's what you had to do back then. And my mom's like, you can do it. I believe in you. And doubts that were there, and then looking for the mentors along the way was, I think, the biggest piece. And I'm going to still, Kamatha and I don't get to present much anymore together, but we have, when we do, those of you that know us, we both have a big belief in you have 3 mentors along the way. You have that mentor that's that family that loves you no matter what, is going to always give you the sunshine, that it's going to be great. But then you have that mentor that starts to be kind of that trusted, honest. So when we talk about it to students, we say it's us, Kamatha and I, of they're going to come, they're going to have the real conversations with you. They're going to kind of help try to navigate that. And then that professional mentor. And I think as I worked through each of my pathways or my journeys that was not linear, was really then struggling at times to think, who's that next mentor? Who's going to be that person that can help me be like, Shawna, you're in over your head, stop. Or, yeah, I think you should do this. And I think that's one of the challenges that I tell students still to this every time we meet is like, you need to look for those. And sometimes it may not be the obvious mentor you think. Sometimes it may be someone that all of a sudden you realize it's the same person I'm going to ask for advice or questions and that sort of thing. And I think that's the biggest part. To full transparency, when I came back for my PhD, other than faculty, I didn't know a single person in my tribe that had a PhD or had gone on to that. So it was really like a first gen student, like, I don't know what to expect. I don't know if I should be in this. And so you'll appreciate this. My brother's an education major. He taught high school science, was superintendent or principal and all of that. I'm sitting in my first PhD education class. I'll never get home that night, call him, and I'm like, dude, I don't know what they're talking about. And he's like, well, it's blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I don't know. I never had a true College of Ed class. And so it felt really like, am I not where I'm supposed to be? I'm having to ask my brother how to do this as a PhD student. And we kind of joke about it now because he went on to get his PhD, and he'll tell you the only reason why, because he's like, I wasn't going to let you beat me and have a PhD. But it was just, I think back to like in that moment, even though he's family, he became that mentor because I was so lost. I was ready to give up. I was working full-time athletics, starting the degree program, and crazy enough trying to do a PhD. And I just felt over my head because the only thing I knew was the athletic training world. And that was my safe bubble space. And so really trying to navigate that. And I was blessed, Dr. Staley, bless her heart, and we remember her fondly. B was one of my first classes in College of Ed. And I remember going up to her after being like, I don't think I can do this. And she's like, why? And I was like, it's not my background. And she's like, you've asked great questions. Are you willing to keep asking and willing to learn? And I was like, well, I'm always willing to learn. And she said, you'll be fine. And so her, Dr. Doris Carroll, honestly, Dr. Pearl, who was my major professor, but Doris and B, I will say probably were the most influential to keep reminding me, like, you can do this. You will be able to do this. Take one step at a time. No one knows all the answers. And I remember telling both of them, well, I don't want to stand in a class and someone asks me something, and what if I don't know it? And they're like, so what? You simply say, great, let's figure it out. And that just reminded me again that you don't have to know it all. You don't have to have the answers. You just be real and have those moments. And I'm sure Courtney can tell you, I said, I don't know, many a times, right? For class stuff. But I think the key was that 2 women from 2 very different backgrounds than myself saw that it was like, again, that encouragement. And again, it's intervention. They both have strong faith. I knew they would be there to support me. And so, B and I, until she had passed, we always talked about that I said, do you remember that? And she goes, I do. She said, I've never seen someone so unsure and so scared sitting in a PhD class. And she said, you felt like you were so out of your league, but she was like, you weren't. And so I say that to, again, remind myself and maybe all of us that you're put in the pathway, you're put in those situations to learn, to grow, and have that moment. And again, I think it's that same moment when a student's sitting there like, I don't think I can do this. And it's like, yes, you can. You can have those moments and you can grow from those experiences. And so, I laugh because who would have thought? Who would have thought all those years ago and now back to this? And again, it's interesting of those, how those evolve and those pieces that come about with that of it. So as seen as I'm looking there at the pictures, athletics has been a big part of my life, and those that know me, that's a huge component. But again, they're people. They're people that are set before us. They're people that have struggles and ups and downs and are real. And I think those are the things that make us that unique component with it, for it. And so my one picture that's sliding through there is my grandpa, that's my dad's dad. And again, he came from a family of 11. He got to come to K-State 1 year. He was on meets judging, all these things. And I laughed because he was so proud when my brother and I came to K-State. All he could ever talk about was, so it's not even here, so I'm going to say it, is the chicken farm still there? Is this still? And I'm like, well, that's a parking lot now, Grandpa, or that's this. And to see his pride when he got to come to my graduation and we showed him campus, and it was just so hard for him to fathom how much it had changed. But yet when he passed and we were going through things, he had kept everything along the way, his meat judging trophy, and he had been part of AGR for 1 year, all these things, and just what that meant to him for those moments to have that community. And so I say that again as a family that the grandparents didn't get to have education and go through that, but they never lost faith that things were going to be better for the rest of us and have those same opportunities and continue to have those experiences. And, I think back, there's been a lot of stories that I could share along the way, but there's been a lot of tragedies and a lot of hardship, and it doesn't define us. My grandpa lost his wife when I was 4th grade. He had never cooked. He was an old farmer. He didn't know how to do anything in the house. He didn't know, but he lived until he was 104. So he had a lot of years left, and loved him. He was a great guy. But I laugh when I think back of all the things that we had to relearn for him or teach him and kind of navigate what that meant. But yet the stories and the enrichment that he was able to tell us and the impact that shaped my brother and I of, you don't give up, you keep going and have those experiences. We come from a long line of genes, because I was blessed to also have a great aunt that lived to be 104 as well. And so the enrichment in that history that we were able to hear and share and have those experiences continue to be a part of that. And so I think the biggest is just taking that time to reflect on that. And I think in the moments of the high stress, the high energy, all those things that go on, we forget that. And that's kind of been this week of, let's just be real, it's been the last since July, of the doubt. Do I do this? Do I stay in this role? Do I continue to make impacts? And then something good will happen, or you'll have a conversation with a colleague. I saw Corey walk in. We had a great conversation yesterday of just, it does matter. And I think that's the hardest part when you kind of look at where we're at right now, is what matters. And it's not, for students, not the grade on the test. At the end of the day, no one cares what your GPA is after you get done. Hence, I have a PhD and I barely made it through freshman year. But it's what matters and what gives you that drive, the passion, and your inspiration. And I think that's the piece that I really want everyone just to think about and to leave. And just remember that your circumstances don't define you. You choose to define that, and you choose to see what those could be around you. And I think we all get in the stuck piece of that. But for me, that's the most important part, is that you make that choice of, I could have let the small town, not a lot of opportunities defined. That wasn't going to be it. I was going to figure it out. Now I count all the blessings, the opportunities, the things that have been given to me, and that experiences that I've had, and there's colleagues across the entire US that you can call in the drop of a hat or reach out to. And I think we all forget how often we have that community and that blessing and that tribe that's there to support you no matter what, that will encourage you, cry beside you, walk there, or just sit with you. And I'm blessed. Many of them are in this room that will just sit there and I can sob, and where it's been the last few months, and just remind me that we'll get through it and it's going to be okay. And I think that's been probably the biggest lesson of reminding myself why I do what I do, why it matters. But I also don't know any different. I mean, I don't know how to not work hard and not give back and pour it out for someone else. So, but I think on that, because I'm going to keep crying, but I'll maybe let questions if there's stuff or anything. So thank you guys for letting me share my story.
So we've got some time for questions. Would anyone be willing to share? And if you do share, please say who you are so we can build this community. Got a question? Thanks.
I'm always willing to grab them.
Then
She hired me, so she knows that.
say
too.
your name so people know who you are.
Hi, yes. My name is Ben Eustis. I'm an academic advisor in the College of Health and Human Science with Communication Sciences and Disorders. So one thing I was going to say is just thank you for being who you are as a professional, but also as a person. As you lead us advisors and the care that you put into your students. I know I've said it a couple of times in messages, but things like that, but I truly do mean that from the bottom of my heart, because I see the passion that you speak about today coming out, and how quick you reply to a student that's even the smallest issue that you want to help with, that if you can do it, you are there to help them. And I'll tell you, the student we worked with yesterday is good to go. And
Good.
and then I would just ask, as somebody that's worked with students, what would you say is the biggest piece of advice you would have for making that connection and making that lasting connection with students? What has been the key for you?
Thanks, Ben. That's a great question. And I think, to be honest, is really what I said of when they walk in that door, it's first off, put everything away. So initially when they come in, it's, you're here, what do you need? Not trying to do something else. But I also think is I try to start off with hearing their story and where are they from and that sort of thing. And not maybe in the crisis moment, but those drop-in times, or taking time to walk around in the building and seeing them sitting there studying, and I'll walk over and say, hey, how's it going? I know you had this last week. What's been going on? And all of a sudden then it becomes, for me, it's then they feel more comfortably like, hey, things are really rough right now. Or, I mean, I've even had it where, hey, I broke up with my boyfriend or girlfriend. What do I do with that? But I think the hard part for me is it's just that authentic. Like I really do want to know who they are and what matters to them. And I think that's been the biggest piece. At times I'll be like, what matters to you? What are things that excite you? And it doesn't have to do with school. It's then finding not always a commonality, but finding something we can start to talk about. And I can ask, like, have you thought about doing this? Or have you talked through that? Courtney may be a better one to answer this when you think about, but I think that's it, is just really trying to get to know them and really know, but reaching back out. So it's not always when they've come and reached out, it's a check-in, or it's sending a note of praise or something. So when I was still full-time advising and teaching, I'd always send a note at the end of the semester of just, hey, you made it. Things are going to be okay. Take some time with that. And I think it's not waiting until it has to be forced or not as authentic with that. There's times that I would also just say, hey, let's go grab a coffee. And it was just to have those check-in moments. And I think that's really what has expanded it. And so now it's those check-ins, it's even now they're gone. I mean, we've got several that are in grad school away from here that I'll still send a note or check in and have those real moments of like, it's just not going well, or this was a lot harder than I thought. And then being that reassurance again of, hey, let's just talk, let's talk through it. And then sometimes it is later on with those relationships is hoping, maybe it isn't the right thing. And let's work through, what does that look like now? What does that mean? And I think respecting, and I think this is where my background in sports psychology and work in athletics is, we know when some of us, our identity has been this. And so when we start to shift that identity, it's very hard. And I'll say that and I'll tell students that even when I made that choice to leave athletics, it was like, I'm giving up a part that has been all I've known since I was a freshman in high school, that this was my goal. I was the rare kid that did not change a major. Like, this was it. This was what I was doing. I had it all mapped out. And my identity had been that. And I think that's the part, is helping them start to realize your identity is not that. Your identity is still you. This was a part of that identity. And so, but I think just even sharing your own stories. I mean, that you're a real person. And I think that's the biggest, is because I can remember, again, old enough to say you had to go to the faculty member's office because there was no such thing as email. But I can remember being scared to talk to faculty, but as you started to talk with them, and again, I think I mimic what people did for me or didn't do that I wished at times people had. And so I would say that from the advising lens of the world, I do what my advisor didn't do. And that's where it's like, I'm a person. I'm not just here to be your next checkbox. But I think just helping them see that you're real. We all have hard days. We all have bad days. We all have great days. And then all of a sudden that they're like, this is someone I can relate with. This is someone that I can talk to. They're not so scary. They're not going to the principal's office to figure something else out. So, yeah. Tamara, calling.
So quickly look at the picture up there. I have to ask because I think my grandma had those curtains, but also I think we might have had the same thing. Is that a 4-H demonstration? Talk about eggs.
Yes.
Hey, did the same thing, only I incorporated candling in it.
So Chelsea will laugh because there was actually another picture. So again, old, I had to call my mom to be like, can you find a bunch of pictures, snap them to send them to me? So yes, my very first demonstration as a 4-H kid at 7 or 8 was Incredible Edible Egg. And so it was all about eggs and it had a little puppet and all this. And Chelsea laughs at me that I still remember this vividly of.
So because I work with one of the groups on campus that is related to 4-H involvement, how do you feel, some of us don't realize that's our first experience with K-State is 4-H. So how do you think 4-H experience has impacted your world today?
Oh my gosh. More than I could ever imagine. From the point of, and I just said this actually to someone in the office this morning, they're like, I would have been scared to death to be talking in front of people. And I was like, I talked in front of people when I was 7. Like, that was 4-H. But I think the thing that, exactly as you said, K-State was that. So I laugh when I started visiting colleges in high school, my mom's like, you have to treat it as a true visit, because I'd come to campus so much with 4-H and all of that. But I think the biggest thing that 4-H really allows is not only the leadership skills, so all those the transferable skills that go and learning to speak in front of people, learning to embrace trying new things, to whether that was a new project or kind of thinking outside the box. As a farm kid, we had animals and all that, so had to learn responsibility. And I can remember at times my dad was like, you got to get up, they're ready to eat, you don't get to not do this. But even I would say, like, from understanding things like we early on with our sheep, like the money we earned, it went back in, but we had to learn how to budget because we were going to buy more, and this was going to be. And the full transparency is 4-H paid for college, because all my livestock and the herds and all that I had as a farm kid, that was those things. But I think the biggest is work ethic and responsibility, and then also building that sense of community. The fun things, yes, 4-H camp and all that, but I got to be part of, I don't even know, it's called something different now, but the national citizenship trip that went to DC that was with all 4-Hers across the state. Get on a bus, drive all the way to DC, stop along the way. We did Gettysburg and everything. But then when you were in DC, we were in Maryland at the National 4-H Center. And honestly, at the time we went and we met, so again, Boris Yeltsin was just coming in and we got to meet him. And it was like this, all of a sudden, this big eye-opening world. Because at that point, I hadn't had anything internationally, I'd traveled, but not, and just realizing then the differences that still unite us all. And so I think, I wouldn't be where I'm at with certain things without 4-H, just because that was part of what was shaping it as we went. And then getting to transition, being a junior leader and helping the next students and teaching things with that. So again, I think that's where it came back to, like, well, you teach people every day. It's just different things, whether it was a demonstration or a rehab skill or something with that. And so I loved it. Full transparency, on my mom's side of the family, like half of them were extension agents, either family consumer science, Fort, all that. So we didn't know any different, but yet it was also something that was enrichment for us and part of that. So yeah. Carrie or Caitlin? Carrie or Caitlin, either one.
Shawna, I'm Carrie Morgan. I'm a colleague of Shawna's in the college. I was wondering if when you're thinking about our students and how much we care for them, you're thinking, and since we can maybe have a receptive audience here, what would be if you had a wand and could change 1 or 2 policies at K-State? What?
Oh.
Okay, now I'm going to say goodbye and get this one away.
Oh my gosh, Carrie. That's a tough one. No, I think it's a tough one. To be honest, is just changing a policy to allow more time to actually interact with people and get to know them and not have it be an expectation that because it's a checkbox for something or it's, but I think even things, so it's not really a policy, but I even think like things like this workshop is, or presentation, somehow to break down those barriers so students see us more than the teacher standing in front of them and what that has meant and that sort of thing. But I think the other is, and again, I don't know what a policy would be, but I think it's also figuring out how to really navigate the differences that we're in right now with our students are such, I mean, they're in such a different place. I mean, we didn't have social media. We didn't have all these things. And yes, I had to work. I was a Pell Grant student, but I was able to balance it. I worked at the library and had those experiences, but I didn't have to work 40 hours or extra. And I think that's where trying to figure out how we can make it, maybe that's the thing, how can we make it affordable? I get we're in budgets and things, but I think some of our students aren't getting to miss out on some of the enrichment opportunities. And it's not because they don't want to have them. They're just having to work and support sometimes families back home, or they're setting the foundation as that first generational student to have that. But I think it's trying to figure out that balance so that everyone can have those experiences and have those opportunities. And again, many want them, but they just don't have that opportunity too, because there's just not enough time in the day, or the finances are their limiting barriers. And I think, I mean, Carrie, you know, in our college, we've worked really hard to try to provide resources so students can have some of those opportunities without it being a barrier, but it's still real, it's still there. And I think the challenge for me is our faculty don't always understand. Again, they haven't taken time to get to know the student's story, that like there's a lot that they're dealing with back home, or there's a lot they're dealing with in their own personal lives. And I think about, I just was actually having a conversation with an individual this morning that I reflected back on when we were the transition of COVID and we had students leaving and we all, you know, shut down after March. And I had a colleague in our college that really asked, they were frustrated because a student wasn't getting an assignment in by 5. And they reached out, they're like, Shawna, I don't understand. And I said, again, because I knew the student, I said, well, he's a farm kid. He's home now. Let me tell you how this works as a farm kid. You're at sun up, sun down out there. Is he still turning them in? And they were like, yeah, but it's not on time. And I said, so change it to allow it to be at midnight, because that's when they're going to be in. And I think that for me is where the hard part becomes, because if you would have taken a moment to know, or just even reach back out and say, hey, is there challenges? What's going on? And I think about it from our Hispanic students when they go home, that community, and what does that mean? And they're all expected to contribute. And I think that's where we're often too quick to just assume that the students maybe being lazy or not, and sometimes it's not, it's just there's something else and they're embarrassed to say it, or they don't know how to explain it, or they're tired of telling their same story to everyone. And I think that's the biggest part. And I remember having that conversation with that colleague during COVID, and I said, it would have been the same for me. If I went home, one, it would have been, you're gonna work. Then, and I know in talking to some of our Hispanic students, like their folks didn't understand that we were still in school. Like they thought we were done because they were now home. And so those are the things that I think the challenges are. And I think we just have to remember there's more than what we know and what we see, and that we have to at least ask. Doesn't mean everyone's always going to share, but at least try to remember that there's a whole that makes all of us, and we all have different, just like all of us in this room, there's different pieces of our lives that are hard and falling apart, and that defines where we're at in that moment too. So no policies, but I think that's for me where I would like, what I would hope we can start to kind of get back to, of embracing who we are, getting to know the people. So, okay. Oh, sorry, I thought Tamara had already handed it to you.
I don't have a question, but it's
Oh.
just a comment, Shawna, that when I was an undergraduate, my very best friend, chosen family,
Yep.
lost her mom
Yep.
junior year, and it was during Dead Week in December. And that email to you, and you very quickly were like, "Tell her not to worry about it. I'm gonna work with her faculty, and we'll make sure that she can finish, but that she can,
Yep.
be home and be
Go
where
home.
she needs to
Yep.
be." And that was just such a salient memory for me. But then also getting to work with you as a colleague, of always, when you're on a committee or in a meeting with Shawna, she is the biggest student advocate. And I think, watching you do that year after year has just been such a good example. And I think even when it might feel challenging to have that perspective, or to take that, from the students, this is what needs to happen. I think it's just really fantastic that you
Thanks,
take that
Caitlin.
to heart and you
Yep.
practice what you preach in that way. So thanks.
I think on that note, that's worth a big round of applause to him. Thank you for taking the time, for your vulnerability, for your strength, for, revisiting your whole life to share it with all of us. I hope we'll all pause for a minute and think about what we've learned from Shawna. And I know for me, I want to think about who I need to thank, because they may not know, with all the work that they're doing, how we can help pay that forward. So thank you so much. And I know we have a lot of Shawna fans in the room. Know that Zara is here. She's an amazing photographer. If you want a group photo to kind of capture this, come on down. But we wish you a wonderful rest of the day, and be well. Thank you.